In our area, I think that diversity is not just about the South African race groups, it's about the rest of Africa.
Many people get excited because their old friends they are meeting old friends. And sometimes you come in a masjid, you say, oh, where you live in? You moved into the area, gee. So it's excitement for people.
When they move into new communities, the first thing they look for is a masjid.
Since the start of democracy and the abolishment of the Group Areas Act, many race groups relocated to other areas within South Africa. This was no different for the majority Indian Muslim community who resided mostly in Lenasia. In the last 30 years, there's been a migration towards the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, including the likes of Houghton, Sandton, Northcliff, Greenside, and others. Radio Islam looks at the growing Muslim population in these areas.
As much as we've now broken away from previously established communities for various reasons, when they move into new communities, the first thing they look for is a masjid. Is how easy it is for their kids to get to madrasas, if not schools, and how can they sort of settle within that community. So they look for other Muslims, right? And most areas, and that's what's attracted a lot of Muslims to this area, not just Houghton, but the surrounding areas, because this is what this precinct provides. It provides a sense of belonging to our Muslim community.
Now initially if it was 20 years or 25 or 30 years ago, we lived in predominantly Muslim communities where we were closed communities, and children attended masjid, madrasa. Generally it was only amongst our own children, we mixed with maybe the Hindus and whichever other children were in those localities. But now you are exposed to many more different cultures, different race groups, different type of people. So it's very important that our children attend madrasa. They get that background or that grounding of Islam, and they become aware of who they are and what they are, and to be proud as Muslims, not to feel shy or feel afraid or feel scared that they are Muslims, but to show what Islam is. So it's very important for them to get the grounding of madrasa and the maktab education. But it's important that our children attend the normal schools also and mix with others, but keep their identity and keep the Islamic ethos and values in front, and mix with people, and it's a form of da'wah for others also.
When we started this academy, it wasn't just about catering for an increased Muslim population, nor was it about just establishing another Muslim school. It was premised on establishing a 100-year institution where kids can come in, establish their identity, understand their role in society, and integrate within this broader global community, right? And I think that's very important, because as we become more diverse and become more cosmopolitan, our kids get exposed to a lot of things that we as children never did. And HMA is the preparation ground as they move forward in their lives.
The Santan region in the north of Johannesburg has also seen a growth in the Muslim population. The chair of the masjids, Yunus Suleiman, says a masjid was needed in the area when it was built in the early 2000s.
At that time, the only masjid in this area was in Marlborough, and so people probably found that it's necessary to find something or develop something closer to home, and that's one of the driving factors in terms of madrasa. That would have been a starting point. And then subsequently, it's about how many families lived in the area and the need to have something at close proximity to attract people to come to what we would call a center of influence.
Meanwhile, Northcliff's Imam, Malana Umar Baum, says the Muslim community in the area is made up of families mostly from Mayfair and Crosby.
You're looking at about 500 to 600 families in these few areas. In the areas of now Fairlands, Barario, Blackheath, there's a musalla that came up in the past 3 years. So alhamdulillah, many of those musallis are attending there. And that area is also growing. Many people are moving in there. And then we have further down in Roosevelt Park, Montgomery Park. So initially, few musallis used to come here, few used to go to Greenside, some used to go to Albertsville. But now there's a to Newlands. Now there's a musalla, there's 2 musallas in Albertsville. There's a masjid being built down opposite West Park Cemetery, that's end of Roosevelt Park from Montgomery Park. And then in Victory Park also there's another purchase of a property, and alhamdulillah they're going to build a masjid there soon. So there are quite a few masajid. Initially it was Greenside and Northcliff, and now there are approximately another 1, 2, 3, 4 around us, 4 or 5, just around us.
Malana says the movement to the northern suburbs has seen old friends meeting again.
We have Lenasia, we have Azadville, you have quite a few now in the past, maybe 2-3 years from Crosby, Mayfair West. Those areas are getting populated even more there. So many of the musallis now that we are seeing in our masjid are from Mayfair and Crosby, Mayfair West, etc. So quite a few people from different parts, they are moving there, alhamdulillah. And many people get excited because their old friends they are meeting old friends. And after sometime you come in a masjid, you say, oh, where you live in? You moved into the area, gee. So it's excitement for people, and it's that rebonding of that friendship that was there for maybe 2, 3, 4 years. People didn't meet each other. In between was the COVID. And alhamdulillah, we see quite a few musallis know each other. They were previously in a masjid, maybe in Crosby or Mayfair West. Lenasia, we've seen, all right, not that many, because Lenasia now you've got a vast area where people move to the south of Joburg or north or wherever it may be. But there are quite a few brothers from Lenasia that moved in also. Quite a few moved into the Barario, Fairlands area also now lately.
Meanwhile, Suleiman says the Sandton Masjid has seen a diverse group of Musallis who also work in Sandton, the richest square mile in Africa.
Pre-COVID, I would say more than 60% of the attendees, let's say for Jummah, were people working in the area, not necessarily living in the area. Post-COVID, it's predominantly people living in the area and working from home, and that, I think, contributed to the reduced numbers during COVID. But in recent times, we've seen now with the relaxed restrictions, we're finding that there's a big, let's call it, return to the masjid, especially during Jummah. But in essence, we've always had a connection to the people working in the area. And from the time that we started up this masjid, at that point in time, we felt that we needed to provide halal food as well to the musallis, especially at Jummah. And we have a lady catering every Jummah, providing home-cooked meals for the musallis, and especially for people who work in the area and may not have been accessible to halal food outlets. What we find recently is that a lot more outlets are halal in Sandton City, and we've got another halal outlet outside the masjid. But in our area, I think the diversity is not just about the South African race groups, it's about the rest of Africa. What we have found in our masjid is that there's predominantly, a number of people that live in Sandton but come from North Africa or West Africa or East Africa. And that is a divergence we have here, and it's a kind of diversity that we kind of enjoy because there's such a diverse crowd. If you look at when we have iftar or we have big nights or even a Jummah, you'll see the crowd is completely different to what you would see in any other northern suburb masjid, which I think is a rich culture which we build on.
As the Muslim community in Johannesburg expands to different areas, all 3 masjids featured say dawah and engagement with non-Muslims in the area is important.
It's important for us as Muslims entering these suburbs, which were predominantly Jewish suburbs, white suburbs and so forth, to establish a presence and establish a relationship with our neighbors. So we go to great lengths to work with this, to work with the other government schools in the area, to share facilities, to provide some of our skills, some of our resources. We work with less fortunate schools in the other parts of the less affluent areas, where we take our children so that they identify. We do some charity work within those schools and so forth. So it's extremely meaningful to be part of a bigger relationship, and I think that certainly underpins HMA in everything that we do.
If you look at the traditional, call it Indian areas of the past, it became an automatic thing that a masjid will be close to you at home, the community will get together at the masjid, the kids will get to know each other. So initially, I think the main focus was to bring the community together so that people could get to know each other as Muslims. I think as we've kind of looked at the current situation, we have developed to the point of like integration of the broader community. And I'll give you an example that supports that, is that we then set up what we would call a vaccination drive-through site on this property, which has been running now for at least 6 to 8 months. And that has then been accessible to every single member of the community in this area. And in fact, to be honest with you, more than 80% of the people that were vaccinated on this site were non-Muslims.
In these areas we are new, so very important is our character, the way we go about living, the way we, our normal social life outside the masjid is very, very important, because that has a direct impact on people. That if we are not going to make an effort on deen and we are not going to spread our deen, then we will get lost, our children will get lost. But if we are on the counter and we are all the time concerned of our akhirah and their akhirah, then we will always see people coming into the fold of Islam. Like alhamdulillah, in our masjid, yes, we have had an open day where we invited many people, and it was very, very beneficial. Many people, the neighbors, people benefited. And the da'wah to be given to people around the masjid. The masjid is right here. It's the center of hidayah, and we know it is the truth.
With the Muslim population growing, Osman believes more expansion is to come towards the north of Gauteng.
South, and we've started sort of migrating towards the north, and somehow the gap between Pretoria and Johannesburg is seemingly closing, right? There's a lot of development happening in between those areas, but somewhere in between Midrand, where the Turkish masjid is, and those surrounding areas, I think there's a lot of room for expansion. There's a lot of opportunity for our Muslims to move into those areas. But again, for us as Muslims, the first thing we look for is a masjid and a community that surrounds us. So those are fairly underdeveloped from that perspective. And I think over time we would see the Muslim community gravitate more towards north or south of Pretoria, for that matter.
Osman says South Africa is one of the best countries in the world to be a Muslim and to practice Islam.
For me personally, South Africa is one of the best placed countries for Muslims. It allows you freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and it allows us to come into these predominantly Christian, Jewish suburbs, establish a footprint, establish an identity, and integrate within that community. What it's actually done, it's allowed us to expand this whole diverse cosmopolitan relationship that underpins South Africa. South Africa is an extremely diverse nation, and having the opportunity to come into areas such as Houghton and surrounding areas, I think it's been extremely beneficial for Muslims within South Africa.